Hi friends, WizD here, welcome to a new Raid Shadow Legends video. Today I'm finally making a guide on the Wixwell clan boss team that's accessible for almost everyone that did the Wixwell fusion a couple of months ago. I owe quite a few of you an apology because in my recent video when I was saying that Seeker is the main component for having quick battle 402 one key ultra nightmare clan boss team, some of you actually highlighted that Wixwell is a second easier way of doing this. I disagreed with them back then, like that was just probably like a couple of weeks ago or even less, because till then I couldn't tune and build this team and say with confidence that it wouldn't randomly fail because of affinity or anything. But now that I've tried it myself, I can speak about it, I can even explain it to you and show you how to build your own team that will never fail, and it will always be Ultra Nightmare, one key, full auto, quick battle, all of that good stuff. Saf got his Excel sheet, Snubraid's got Photoshop where he's explaining the path events and everything. I got my PowerPoint, that's how I explain stuff best. So we'll dig into PowerPoint, but I'll jump in and out of it because what I want to show you also, previous videos from other content creators early on that everyone is depending on in building those teams, and also my team, my speed tune and how I built it. This is my team, this is the final version of my team. As you can see on the screen here, my main damage dealer is Frozen Banshee. All of the other champions except Wixwell are replaceable by more budget ones, and that's exactly what we'll discuss during that guide. Because I just used champs that are maxed on my account because I didn't want to waste too many resources there. So Aniri and Demetha are just buff extenders. That can be even Valerie and Hellborn. Wixwell of course is irreplaceable, and then Lysandra can be Apothecary. She's filling exactly the same role as Apothecary in the similar teams. We'll explain the speeds, different variations and everything, don't worry about it. But the main things that I wanted to highlight here is that Frozen Banshee or Petrifier, any good single target damage dealers over that length of time of the battle can do a 1 key damage, and then everybody else can pitch in like a million or two just to make sure it's comfortably 1 key and we're not falling behind here. Wixwell is doing like 13, you can see it behind me, 13 million damage on his own, so he can do decent damage over time because of the counter attacks and everything. Back to our guide, let's start talking about the basics first. How it works. The idea behind the shield infinity teams is that you're putting a shield on the team, and this shield will grow faster than the ability of the clan boss to ramp up the damage from turn to turn, so that this team is basically infinite. If it wasn't for the 1500 turn limit that they put on the clan boss. And by then, even with champs that don't usually do that amount of damage, but over time they do, you just got your 1 key based on that. These teams were very difficult to build in the past because they required Brogni, Krisk, a bunch of other factors there, and they were depending on Cadaver. Wixwell made this super easy for everyone here, so forget about the old teams, we're explaining the new ones. Main idea here, put a shield on the team. This shield cannot be broken at any time. If the shield is broken, all the run will fail, and that's probably the cause of the random failures that some people are getting, and I'll tell you today how to avoid that. So put a shield, make it grow. This is the main idea here. What we'll discuss now is the inception of the Wixwell teams, and then in a few slides we will discuss what it needs, what the shield needs, what the other champions above extender needs, gear sets, speeds and everything. We'll discuss the details so you can make whatever variation you want from this. Before we proceed with the guide, I wanted to show you a few links that I think are important in our understanding of how this type of team works, and also it gives credit to those who explained it best to the community early on. The team was actually, I think that Hell Hades was the first one, at least to the best of my knowledge, unless it was on Reddit first, but he was the first one who brought up the team at the time of the Wixwell fusion and then started explaining different versions of it. I will link all videos in the description below as always, and the timestamps on the videos and everything. Hell Hades video here explained this is the most budget friendly version of it. What are we talking about? We'll go back and talk about it more in the guide. Apothecary, as I was mentioning, instead of Lysandra in my case, damage dealer, and then 2 buff extenders and Wixwell. And if you see this team, like if we scroll a little bit earlier, I think it did over 100 million damage. That's the budget version, and that's what I built on top of. So go back, check his speeds. Hail Hades speeds are different than mine. There is quite a range here, but if you don't know how to speed tune this kind of team to work correctly, it's safer for you to follow some of the speeds that are already in the videos that tested this and proven to be working there. So that's Hail Hades variation, and the initial one that was published to the best of my knowledge. Second one that I'll link in the description because it's showing another thing that's interesting here is this one from Boozer, because there's a couple of ways that you can run this team. I will explain it in detail in the guide, but this one is a variation with a skill reset champion. You can either run Reflex or Mercenaries or depend on something that's more predictable, which in this case Renegade, or of course it can be Chimera or whatever, but he's depending on the buff extenders. Again, this is super budget or rares and Renegade to like do the skill reset to keep the shield building fast enough. We'll go into it in more detail in the guide there. So that's Boozer's video. I'll link it in the description as well. The last video that I'll link below is JGig's version of this team. And why I think that JGig's video is important here is he did a deep dive into how you can tune this using the clan boss calculator from Deadwood Jedi. So if you cannot build a team with the exact speeds in one of these videos or mine, then you can go to the calculator and tune it a little bit up and down. For me personally, I'm not good with speed tuning using the calculator, so I just try it within a range, force close the game, not to use the key till it works for me. So that's the third video that I'll link in the description below. If you want a deep dive into the clan boss calculator generally, not even for this comp specifically, that's a very good video that I recommend for this. Last link that I'll put in the description is Hail Hades optimizer, team optimizer link here. Basically, you choose a champion and it will show you from the community what variations of this team are out there. If you don't want to do the search yourself about buff extenders, damage dealers, ally attackers or whatever, everything that can work for this team, you can see it here on Hail Hades website. So you'll see a few of the variations I'm talking about, like here Brogni or Valkyrie, putting up the shield instead of Wixwell, and then we're just depending on extending it over and over again. There are quite a few options here that we can see, so many variations, so you can pick and choose depending on the champions that you have, ranging from the budget options with rares to some super OP comps using Ninja and Turvold. Of course, the key factor here is you don't want to lock these champions to specific speeds for the comp, for the clan boss comp, if you're using them elsewhere. But if you can use them with the same speeds, because this team goes better the faster you can make it go. So if all of these champions, probably except the Mesa, you're not using him much elsewhere, maybe Faction Wars, you can make them fast enough in their original builds and they will work for the clan boss team, then all good there. Let's go back to the guide. We talked about how the team works and we've shown some links and examples there. Now let's talk about the initial factor that makes this team work, which is a shield big enough to absorb the clan boss hits. Running this kind of team, you have two options. Either Wixwell applying the shield himself with his A3 and then extending it with his A2 over and over again, making sure that the other buff extenders keep extending the shield duration so it never expires and it keeps growing. Or other options that I mentioned here is what I just showed you on Hail Hades website. You can have a second champion in the team. I think that Brogni and Valkyrie are the best options because they can apply a decent shield. So Wixwell will be a buff extender himself without the need at all for him to apply his own shield. The simpler one in my opinion, which is what I'll show you in my team, is that Wixwell putting up the shield and then extending it. No need for a second champion there, but if you have the other champions, you can use them as well. The other option here, or a complementary option, this is important, is gear sets. There are some gear sets that you can use and there are some gear sets that you cannot use in this composition. If you can put Reflex for anyone, or Merciless also resets this if I'm not mistaken, but Reflex is the main thing that you can farm from the Ice Golem here. Reflex on the buff extenders or Wixwell will help you boost and maintain that shield faster and with lower stats, but you should not depend on this. The only thing that you can depend on is a shield set to make that shield bigger at the beginning. So Wixwell's job in extending the shield and making it larger is a bit easier. You can put another champion next to Wixwell with a shield set, a shield and not a bolster set. Bolster sets will not work here because the protected shield from bolster set cannot be extended. You need a traditional shield set on one or two champions if your stats are not high enough, just to help Wixwell make that shield bigger in an easier fashion. For the shield part, that's all of it. Put a shield big enough so the clan boss cannot break it. If the clan boss breaks the shield, the run is over basically. Second component of this team is the buff extension. We need to extend the buffs, the duration of this shield, other buffs, but the shield as well, so it keeps growing over time while we are enlarging it in a rate that's faster than the clan boss stacking its damage. So what is the main component here? Your buff extenders, including the two most budget ones, Valerie or Hellborn, or you can use two of the same one if that's what you have. They should be on a 3-turn cooldown for their buff extension, just to sync with Wixwell extending as well and putting up the shield and everything. Buff extenders who are not booked or who apply their buff extension on a longer period, probably they will be very difficult to run in this team unless with crazy speeds. So there are so many options with 3-turn buff extension that we've seen in the examples that I've shown you a bit earlier. Enquiries, Valerie, Hellborn, Demetha, Aniri. Lots of champions there ranging from the most budget to Mikagi. Of course, as I was saying a minute ago, reflex sets will help just refresh those cooldowns or refresh accessories, of course, same for Wixwell, to help them get back to that skill faster while setting the priority in the AI setup, so they'll keep putting up shields and extending it. Third way of doing it is what we've seen on the Boozer video there, is actually adding a champion that will do the skill reset faster like Renegade. What this will allow us, which what we'll talk about during the speed tune, is that it will allow us to run the champions at lower speeds. Because one of the main things for this type of team, it needs to go fast enough to grow the shield fast enough. If you have Renegade in there, resetting the cooldown by 2 turns, she's helping everyone get back to the shield and extending it fast enough without having the whole team run at crazy fast speeds. Which is the perfect segue for us to talk about speed and speed tuning for those teams. Exactly like the unkillable clan boss teams, these teams are teams that require speed tuning. They require the whole team to be going at a certain range of speed. So a range is a little bit more permissive in this kind of team, but they need to all go in the same range, so there is no champ that will expire the shield. That's why, for example, Relentless is not recommended for this kind of team, because if the champion, usually the damage dealer, is in Relentless and he takes quite a few turns early on, they will cause the shield on them to expire, and then they will be like exposed to the clan boss and they will be killed. So speed tuning, everyone needs to go in the same speed range. If you cannot tune it via the calculator, just follow one of the videos and guides, mine or one of the 3 others or any of the others that are out there. Everyone needs to maintain the shield and keep it growing so the team won't fail. We already talked about using the calculator, or if you're not sure, just following one of the guides. Third point here, which is very important, is using Lysandra or Apothecary. Let's talk Apothecary because he's the most budget accessible. Here is just a rare that you can get from a green shard. Having a speed booster is very important in this team. You'll see it in JGig's video. He's using Elva, which is a Lego, and I'm using Lysandra, but you can also use Apothecary. The important thing here for the speed booster is that they are enabling the whole team to go faster than they should. So the speed range will drop a little bit. If you check the teams from the Hell Hades link that I will share in the description below, you'll notice one of two things. All the teams range from having lower speeds with a reset champion like Renegade, so these teams can run, don't quote me on this, but around the 200 range of speed. My team and most of the teams with a speed booster are running in the range of 220-230 speed, while the teams without speed booster or skill reset will be running at a higher speed rate. Usually we're talking 260 to 280 speed, which might be a little bit too high for you, especially if you haven't been playing the game for so long. So the mid-range, in my opinion, the best option here is the speed boosting budget option, which what we'll show today, and you can replace the champions as I was saying. Last point that's very important here, depending on how strong, how much defense you have on your team and how fast they are going there, that you have to test for affinities. If you're using a spirit champion and switching to magic affinity will cause this champion to take more damage early on, that they will break the shield and the whole run will fail, do what Jagex is doing. Basically, he has two different champions that he's switching for affinities. Main point here, test on all affinities. After the first few runs, Wixwell will keep the intercept buff on all champions, so you don't have to worry about the stun. And after the shield grows big enough at a faster rate, it doesn't matter anymore. But if this team breaks, it's going to be in the first 20-30 turns basically. Now, after we talked about all the factors that will participate in making your Wixwell team successful, let's jump into the game. I'll show you my team, I'll show you the speeds, the builds, the AI setup, and everything. If we have a key, we might even do our brutal key now and see how it will work. Yes, we do have a key, so let's run our brutal one. Okay, so this is my team. As I was saying, Wixwell is irreplaceable. Him being in the lead spot to increase the defense of everyone is important. If you don't need the additional defense and you're running a champion like Lissandra, for example, with her speed boosting aura, you can use her in that spot as well. Apothecary doesn't have an aura that will work here, but anyway, most people run Wixwell in lead. We'll check the AI setup and everything. 2 buff extenders, Hellborn, Valerie, Anchorite, whoever you want there, anyone on those spots will work. Any damage dealer will work, they will do enough damage over time. And then our speed booster here, which can be Apothecary, as I said. Let's check the AI setup. First thing that you need to note here are the speeds. The speeds can have a range. I'm not saying that you need to have those specific ones, but if you will deviate too much from that speed, higher or lower, make sure to tune the rest of the team accordingly or use the calculator for it. So I'm having my Wixwell run at 226 speed. I have him in reflex, not needed. You'll never need it for this run. I prioritize him putting up the shield and then extending it. That's it basically. The accuracy is nice for the attack down, so he doesn't hit hard enough early on to break the shield. So that's Wixwell at 226. Then we have our first buff extender running at 220, or in this range, it's the meta. Why I have her apply her block damage in the beginning, just to have the continuous heals as an additional buff that will help Wixwell with extending the shield bigger. It's not needed here. If you're using anyone else instead of the meta, just prioritize their buff extension skill and that's it. You can lock everything else down. Same with Aniri here. Aniri, I let her do whatever she wants. She will never use the revive, but yeah, just prioritize the buff extension and she's running at 200 speed. So you see here, those speeds are very permissive if we talk budget wise. Probably I think that Wixwell might be the fastest after Lissandra. Usually your speed booster will be the fastest, but the 2 buff extenders at 200 and 220 are very permissive there. The damage dealers running at 230 range, there might be a little bit of flexibility there, but I didn't test much with it. I tested multiple champions in that spot. Frozen Banshee gave me the best damage because on extended longer battles, her poisons and poison sensitivity can do enough damage to surpass the 1 key basically. And then the speed booster is running at the 260 range. Of course, I'm prioritizing her speed boosting ability. Same for Apothecary. For Apothecary, it's going to be his A2. You can disable his heals. He will never need them there. Just prioritize the speed boosting. Speed booster is fastest at 260 range, 263 in my case. 226 for Wixwell going second and applying the shield. Then the 2 buff extenders. The damage dealer can go whenever he wants. It doesn't make much difference there. Let's do our key on Brutal now. Probably this team will do, so it's magic. This team will do around 150 maybe on Brutal. Let's see. I've tested it on other affinities but with different damage dealers here. 116 doesn't matter. All you need for a 1 key, Brutal, Nightmare, Ultra Nightmare. If you want to run it on hard, it will do the same damage more or less. More than 1 key by far. That's it for our Wixwell team guide. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the description below. I'll make sure to put the timestamps so you can jump back and forth through the guide, and a link to the videos that I mentioned in the description. Like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for tuning in today. I'll see you next time. Bye.